G'day everybody, this is a complete Vampirella build from the 3D printed model through to the painted finished model. I have a friend that has a life-size picture of Vampirella in his hallway, and he discovered on Cults 3D a 3D sculpt of the thing that's the same as his poster, and asked could I make it. So the model itself that you can buy from Cults 3D is smaller. I'm using a Elegoo Saturn 8K printer, so I found the extremities of the printer and enlarged the model to the biggest that I could physically fit. If you actually go for this model, it is not the base that's the largest, I discovered, so I did the base first and made it as large as I could possibly make it, and then I started printing the parts of the model, and it's actually the torso that takes up the most space. And I exceeded my printer's capabilities by about 4mm, so I've had to milliput her collar back in. So when the model came out, because of making it hollow just for the sake of the resin costs, there were some holes, air holes and things for the model, and I also had a little, it wasn't a major print failure, but I had some print things where there was some crazy bits going on that I had to sort out. So I had to put the collar back in, as you can see just there, and fix up the tiny little bit of the curve that didn't get made, and then the rest of it was just filling up holes. The thing that I had the most issue with was the base. The base printed, there was a whole lot of holes in it. I am assuming that it was the way that just my printer, because I expanded it. But I had to go through and, as you can see here, milliput most of the skulls. I think all bar one of them had a hole in the side of the skull, and some of the design that was coming down ended up with some bits missing out of it that I had to milliput and put back in. One of the skulls had half its face missing, and you'll see me working on that on the end and just blending it back in and getting it back to where it was because this is for my friend, and he was wanting me to make a model for him. I didn't want it to be dodgy. I put the air holes for the model for the base in the eye sockets of the skulls, so all of the skulls ended up with a dotted bit of milliput too, and that was quite disconcerting when they were finished, because all the eyes had a little, they each had a little yellow, looked like an iris pupil looking at you from the dark depths of it. As I said, this one the base had a fair bit of stuff missing. You can see to the left of my hand, that's a gaping hole that I ended up having to gradually fill up with milliput. So I put a bit in, let it go off, came back, made some more, let it go off, and then eventually got to where I could sculpt it and blend it into the same as the models. This took a fair bit of working and mucking around to get there, but the print for the base was I think it's about 22 or 23 hours or something or other, and even with the hollowing, it still used a fairly sizable chunk of resin, so I didn't want to redo it all. It looks fine in Lychee. When you slice it, I couldn't see any issues with the file, and so I wasn't prepared to do another 20-something hours of printing and end up with issues that I got this time around, when it's just a matter of filling it and shaping and modeling the things that were missing to fix it all up. So I've sped up the video, as you can see, and I have taken shortcuts for all the process, because it was several hours doing it all, and I figure you don't need to see absolutely everything. It's just patching it up and putting it together. When it was done, this skull that had the most work, when I'd finally put it together and shaped it, it was a little bit chunky in compared to the others, so I did go back and Dremel it. I can't remember whether I've included that dremeling in this video or not, because sometimes my video camera got full and I did a couple of things. So there you go. That's it. Pushed together and just waiting to be, as you can see, it looks a little bit rounded there near the top, so some of that had to get taken back, and I had to go through and sand out and Dremel out some of the crazy things that had happened in the base. Yeah, overall, once I put a primer on it and painted it, it's not obvious where the issues were, and I was comfortable enough with the finish of it all to be prepared to let that go out. At this point in time, though, I was wondering whether that was going to be a thing or whether I was going to have to start again. When you've got extra milliput, what do? I make roses. My mum used to do cake decorating, so in amongst all of that I learned how to make icing sugar roses. So if I have leftover milliput or leftover green stuff, I just start with a thing and then make a rose. So this one's been several builds in the making, and just if your stuff starts to go off, rather than just having a blob or making a rock, I make a rose. So there you go. We're there, rose fountain. So that's what it looked like when it got sprayed up. This just got a combination of a charcoal metallic and a black over the top of it, and I put a felt base pad on the bottom just so that it's a little bit more non-slippy. And like you can tell, like you can see, I mean, there's the bits that I had to do up aren't very obvious in comparison to any of the other things, so I'm quite happy with that. The boots were the easiest. There was a little bit of sanding for those, but they ended up just being a gloss black. I started with the spraying of the really dark tones. Thank you to Groundeffected. I watched a whole heap of Groundeffected videos, and I can totally recommend them to anybody that's thinking about doing figurine airbrushing, because he's got some really good things. I had packets of problems with my airbrush. I did print an extra, that's the actual size arm, not expanded, and so I printed one of them to try and do the basic sort of tones. I started having issues with my airbrush, so this was a nightmare, and I had to sand a whole heap and start again. But another YouTube video. If you wonder what I listen to, that's it. There's all sorts of music playing, but sometimes you'll see me dancing and carrying on. I had a lot of issues. It was having to be too thin to get it to work. There was a whole lot of patchy stuff, and I watched another couple of videos about airbrushing to try and figure out what some issues were, and I discovered that there's a process that I have neglected in the time. When I first started airbrushing many decades ago, mostly it was with inks for doing illustration. So the gradual learning to do the airbrushing with acrylic paints for models has been a bit of a process. I've had to unlearn some things. So once I'd done the flesh tones, I thought it was a little bit too yellow. I was using Tamika Basic Flesh, but I think the Basic Flesh in Tamika is more suited to a oriental skin. So I grabbed some Vallejo colours and started to put a little bit more red in it. I was trying to decide whether Vampirella would be more bluey skin tones, but when I went and had a look at the posters and the image that I'm working from, she looks pink enough, so I decided to just go with regular skin sort of a thing. So it started with the shadows and doing the folds in the skin that are going to have a shadowy bit, and they got done quite ready, and then gradually lightening the tones up and doing from directional spraying from above and getting gradually lighter and lighter and lighter. Again, thank you very much to Groundeffected for his videos on the way that he does his things. He's got several ways that he does skin that you can look as he modifies them, but I found his tutorials to be extremely helpful with YouTube tutorials with trying to get my head around doing this. I haven't done any female sculpts in my life, so I don't do things, and Vampirella's got some very interesting curvy bits, so I wanted to make sure that she looked as natural as I could get it. I'm really happy with the results. Her skin ended up getting several more airbrush layers because I had some disasters. There was one thing where I found a filler mark that I hadn't sanded properly, so I had to sand one bottom cheek back. Oh, there you go. And later in the build I was almost finished, and I was wearing the gloves that I was wearing and helped my son with a 3D print issue, and came back with some uncured resin and solvent on my fingers, and ended up completely stripping off her hip, just on the front too, where you're going to see it the most. So she had a last minute re-airbrush and touch up of various parts of her skin tones. Once I'd done the skins, I wanted to get the eyeshadow done, and I was really trying to be faithful to the poster. So I've ended up pretty chuffed with the doing. After the airbrushing of the skin, the majority of the painting was done by hand with just using brushes. So it was a slow and steady process of building up the colours. I did the collar, and then I did several darker shades of the colliery colour, bringing it up to light colours. And it's just painting. So I've tried to show you enough that Carl, you watching it, shout out to my friend Carl, who's the model for, just to give you enough of an idea of how it went, because you like that sort of thing. For everybody else that knows how to paint, if you're a bit bored, zing your way through, because this is showing how to do it, but I'm being a little bit more, what do you say, a bit more complete. I've used complete a few times already in this build, a little bit showing you a bit more than I would. There's the roses that comes along with extra milliput that went in over the times. There's lots of projects on the go at the moment, so there's a bit of filling been happening. I don't think it ever gets into focus, and it didn't end up getting painted. I was going to paint it with all the reds once I started on her clothing, but that didn't happen. So it was gradually building up the collar and getting that colour done, and then doing some shading with the reds and the tones, and also doing the eyes. Now again, I watched both a Squidmar video and a Groundeffected video on how they do their eyes, and I would absolutely recommend doing it the way that they do it. They both do a reddier tone down the bottom, and then a darker, almost black burgundy up the top, that you then only lightly put your white over, so that you get the undershadowing from the eye thing. So that's the eyes before the white goes in. So you've got a really defined sort of horizon line of black to red, black to pink in the eyes, and it will be how I do it, because the eyes turned out, I'm really happy with the way they came out when it was done. So again, here's the shading, doing some of the bits that are more in shadow, like I did with the skin tones with the red, so that when we go over the top of it with the brighter red, there's a little bit of the, because I'm not airbrushing this and masking up the skin tones, I was quite nervous about mucking the skin tones up, seeing as how they'd been really good. Little did I know that I was going to have to do them twice, with my frustration. And yeah, so shadowy undertones, which we might have seen enough of, I think. I'm going to press pause. There you go, a little bit of on-the-fly editing. So I've cut a little bit out of that. This video initially was 34 minutes long, so whatever it ends up being, I'll have cut out for you and saved you, hopefully, some more drama. So while I was doing the white coats on the collar still and building those tones up. I also have now done the lightest filling in of the eyeballs, but as per the Groundeffected and Squidmar videos, you don't go to the edges, you leave a little bit of your underpainting showing, which helps with the eyes. So yeah, I don't know how long this is going to end up, because I keep thinking we're watching too much of the same thing. So underneath the collar there is also a very thin strap line of the red. That was quite tricky to paint and to get in there without getting it on everything else. And on the whole, I actually have really enjoyed painting this model. It was a stretch. I was quite stressed for lots and lots of it, feeling like I was going to not do it justice. And so as all the bits that came together, I was very, very, very happy with the way that this has ended. So I think you can see there that I'm detailing and doing the outlines so that I can come back and fill in the colour later. I don't know that we need to watch too much more of this. Excuse me again. Get another edit. So the painting of the red, I did a couple of layers of red, and then I did some layers where I mixed the red with a little bit of white and got lighter, and added some highlights on the top of her breast line and just on the edges of a hip strap. Some of those, the hip strap ones, might have got a little bit obscured when I had to repaint the hips, but it's just subtle. It was just because the skin tones have come really well, I thought I'd add the highlights on the fabric as well to try and give it a little bit more depth. Because the model is such a lovely reproduction of the poster, I didn't want it to be about painting. I wanted it more to be about the model. So I've tried really hard to only minimalise the amount of tricky painting things that I would do to it, in the hope that it was subtle enough to do good things, but not taking away from the overall look of the model in a painted way. So here I am doing some of the really lighter reds. I mixed the white with the red, made a lot subtler, lighter version of it, put it on, and then used water to help wet blend it a little bit into the overall red colour. There was places where I went back over with the straight red and did the same thing in reverse, where I put the red on and then blended it back into the lighter. And on the whole, I think the light catches a little bit on the where I've done it, and it looks like a natural light source highlight. The eyes, after you've done the white, you do your iris colours. I went with just a brown because it was pretty hard to see from the poster whether she had unnatural eyes or anything. And so with the brown, then you dot in your pupil, trying to make sure that your eyes are the same size and that they look in the same direction. And there was a caution that Groundeffected said, and I had to do it a couple of times to go around the outsides again and to try and get them to be the same height and looking in the same direction, so she's not cross-eyed or anything. The poster has her looking down her nose, but the model hasn't got the head tilted up as high, so I put the eyes a little bit lower than I might have if I'd not seen the poster, but on the whole they look great, and I'm very, very chuffed with them. After you've done all of that, you then go in and put your highlights in with a really fine little dot of white, and I put 2 highlights in because I saw that recommended on one of the eyes. Then it was her bat. The bat was just a fairly uniform sort of a paint job. It was splashing a whole lot of black on it. So I did flat black, and then I did some browns, and then I did a brown wash. I highlighted with some brown and some red and some white, so it's sort of like a pinky brown, the ears and around the mouthy bits, like the poster has, and tried to faithfully reproduce what the bat looks like on the end of her arm. After all of that, I was feeling like I was on the home stretch, and so it was the hair. In hindsight, if I was to do this again, I wouldn't glue the hair on. Oh no, sorry, the hair was glued on. The hair is part of the head, but in hindsight, I would seriously consider painting the head separately from the body, because trying to get in underneath, not getting on your collar, not get it down your back, but getting up underneath that fairly broad area at the back there was quite tricky. The poster, the comics make her look like she's got black hair. The poster made it look like she has a really, really dark brown hair. So I opted to go for a raw umber with almost equal parts of black, so that it's quite a dark brown. Before I did her hair, I was quite surprised that she had a bit of a Taylor Swifty look to her before the hair was done. Certainly before the bikini bit got painted, she looked very Taylor Swifty. I asked Carl whether he would have preferred a Taylor Swift Vampirella, and he said no thank you. So we didn't go down that track. It appears that some of these photos are out of order because her eyeballs were done after. So then I continued I had to do the painting of the hair in several stages. So I was glad for my wet palette because it kept the paint colour dry. I mixed up a bottle, which you can see there to my left in front of me, to your left I mean, in front of me, of the colour, just to make sure that I had enough brown, and then I gradually went through and did some blacker bits so that I could do some darker shades underneath where the hair is going to be underneath, and then eventually I went through and did some lighter highlighty browns. And just looking at the poster, she has a little bit of a sheen on her forehead, just on where her bangs are at the front there, and so I did a lighter, both a lighter in colour and a very light wash, and I did some highlights in her hair of the light colour. Just to, all of these things was, I'm not sure quite where she was going to end up being displayed, and so I was trying to, because the skin tones have got the highlights and the shadows on them, I thought I better put it onto, as I said, some of the fabric and some of the hair, just in case she's not lit from the direction that would naturally produce the light, and so that she doesn't look weird when her skin tones have shadows and lighter shades. The hair painting was, I was feeling pretty funky up to that, and that's when I thought that I was near the end. So it was a good feeling getting there, until I discovered that, like I said, that my thumb had bad stuff on it and managed to strip the entirety of her hip. I can't remember whether I show you that or not, but it was about this, because I was starting to paint the gold and thought, oh, I'm here, we're finished, let's go, it's good. So fairly simple paint scheme, red, white, gold, and apart from the skin tones, it's not a complicated one to do, and the results are excellent. This is such a lovely model. It's got some really, really good details, and she is quite a sexy model. She looks great when her boots are stuck on her. At this stage I had redone the skin where I'd stripped it off on that hip there, and I masked off the hair and the majority of her body with a bit of Glad wrap, but I had to do a light mask with my finger. That's why I re-screwed her back onto the board, so that I could have one hand spare for just trying to mask off the airbrush a little bit. Unfortunately, there was no way I could avoid it getting onto some of the bikini lines and things, so I did have to go back and do a little bit of touch-up. All in all, the touch-up was only about 20 minutes when I got it done. So after that, it was assembling, and it's been a couple of months. I had to do this. I've had to do it in between my regular working days and things like that, and so it's been quite. I've been antsy to glue things together and get her done. So as you can see, she's looking pretty cool. In between here and I think the boots going on, she got a coat of clear. I tried to go with Army Painter's matte spray. It's matte though, it's not flat. I don't know whether you'll get a flat one anywhere. So she ends up with a little bit of sheen on her. I really like the flat finish, but practical so that you can be able to dust things and things. I always end up putting a lacquer coating over it, because especially with those skin tones that I've already put marks on and stripped off once, I don't want Carl having a conniption. Careful when you glue her legs down. Just make sure that you don't trust them until you're sure of it. The left leg, my right hand, went on well, but the right leg, my left hand, my left hand, there was a couple of times where it wasn't quite stuck, and I left her for a period of time after I finally glued the boots to the base. Before I did anything, I let this thing set completely before I trusted it, and I left instructions to shift her when you shift her by holding her waist and her base, just in case down the track. The amount of gluing surface area that you get, there are projections that come up out of the base that go into the base of her shoes, which gives you a little bit more area to glue on, but all you get is where her toes touch and the tiny little heel of her stiletto. So there's not a great deal of area there to trust your glue with. Make sure you use a good one, and the results are great because of the way she's standing. It's just it's a lovely model, and I've super enjoyed it. All there is left now is the glamour shots. So I took some video while I was doing it, and then I took it outside and put it on a rotary, my human operated rotary thing. So there you go. I hope you have enjoyed watching the process of the doing. I've left the link for the Cults 3D model if you want to purchase it. I bought it in Australian dollars. It's €19. So in Australian, that's about 35 or 36. Excuse me, I got the hiccups. And here's just some stills of that from that same place. As you can see, I'm pretty chuffed with those eyes. They turned out well, and I again thank Groundeffected and Squidmar for the build videos and the tutorials that they do. If you are doing any of this sort of thing, they're the blokes to watch, and I found it super helpful. So yeah, as you can see, there's the original poster, and the model has turned out pretty good to that. This is so high tech. This is unbelievable. Carl, I really hope that you get as much enjoyment out of watching this video as you did out of seeing the model when I dropped off the other day. I thank you for asking me and trusting me to do it. I really enjoyed making this model for you, and I hope that whoever decides that they're going to fight for it in your will enjoys it as much when they're having it. Don't give it back to me. Give it to somebody else. I loved it, but I've got this video and all the photos to enjoy from here on in. So thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate anybody that gets a kick out of it, and if you feel like leaving a comment, go for your life. I'm not the technical savviest enough to find the comments sometimes, and because I don't do these things monetarily, I don't necessarily get back to them quickly. But if you ask a question, and if I find it, I will always endeavour to answer it. I thank you for watching, and I hope you've really loved everything, and I will see you with the next build that I do.